You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I had people walk out of me before, but not when it was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. Phillip Ittner joins us live from Ukraine, or he did for a second there. We're having
he's back.
issues.
He's back.
As you do, yeah, it bounces in and out. It comes and goes. There he is. Yeah, it's a natural part of the whole thing. We'll get him. Fear not. But I would, for the record, there's so much going on. There he is. I think I have to, for the stream to see him, I think I have to bring a new link in, but we're good. In that process.
Yay.
There is a tremendous amount of news, so hopefully we will get that cleared up in just 2 seconds. And 3, 2, 1, hopefully there. Philip, can you hear us? Do you hear us, Phillip Ittner? Might be an issue on his side because I see from his end, I see the oh dear link Wi-Fi signal. I can tell what his internet signal looks like in Ukraine on the side that I'm in, and it's not promising. He's
and I hear some tiny fill in there. Oh,
yes.
Oh.
Yeah. See, it almost came back. It happens. We'll deal with it. Whoops. Okay. I'm not going to paste in a new link until he shows up on here. In the meantime, he's rescheduled. There's a couple of things.
Hello.
There he is. Hey, there he is. Welcome, Phil.
There we go.
Hi.
Right.
Hi. Hello. Hi. There he is.
Looks like my internet is not great tonight, so we'll see how this goes.
Understood. Well, we
Thanks for
understand
being
that
with us.
considering where you are and what's going on and the amount of activity going on in Ukraine right now, that is not surprising. If I was them, I would have checks on all the international streams of the internet going in and out of the country right now, regardless, right?
Yeah, or it just could be, traffic.
Or it could be Elon Musk messing with the internet. Right.
Sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Closing down Starlink.
We'll get to the question of leadership in Turkey flipping over, and Erdogan being behind in the polls massively as their currency has. I mean, it's bad already. It's I think they have somewhere in the order of like 86% inflation, and it's just gotten worse in the last couple of weeks. So it really does look like the opposition, which wants to lean closer to the EU, is very wants to. Considers very much Turkey to be a democratic, European-leaning country with those kind of values and ideas, as opposed to a Russian oligarch-style, kleptocracy like Erdogan wanted to run it. And of course, his economic policy is specifically linked to the collapse that they're in. I mean, he literally, for those that don't know, when everybody else was raising interest rates to counter inflation, he went, maybe that doesn't work. And he just dropped in the interest rates into the floor in an attempt to go, I guess some sort of like, he read some book on investing in the market and goes, if everybody's running one direction, run the other way and you'll make money. And that's sort of crayons and hammers attitude about economics. And it caused, what's going to be approaching 112% inflation over the next month. And so he's kind of sealed his fate. And the person running against him, Kemal, is definitely pro-Europe, pro-Ukraine, pro-democracy on a major level. And Turkey is a big player in the world. They are a very modern country when they're allowed to operate as one. And so that's a big hit for Russia in this sense. What's happening there in terms of your experience, Phil? What's the latest update? And then we'll get into our questions from our chat room, and then I have some questions about some stuff.
We've had a few nights this week where we had attacks and air raids, but there's Bakhmut. We can talk a little bit about that. Looks like the Ukrainians may have actually regained some territory. The Wagner guys are inside. There are reports that Russian troops are fleeing. Actually, there's some video of them actually fleeing, and Prigozhin has been very critical of regular army, Russian army soldiers fleeing their positions. He's staying internally within Bakhmut. So,
Mhm.
That's still, Bakhmut continues to be a nightmare. What else have we got here? The Brits have announced they're giving cruise missiles. That's
Right.
a big deal. That increases increases Ukraine's range significantly. I think this cruise missile has a couple of different variants, but I think the one they're getting is like 250 kilometers, which
Right.
off the top of my head is like 150 bucks, 150 miles, 175 miles, something like that. If I've got
Right.
my arithmetic
Yep.
right. But it's that can strike most of Crimea. Uh, people are starting to freak out. Apparently, the Russians are starting to freak out a little bit about it. They're freaking out about the cruise missiles, and they're freaking out about the imminent counteroffensive. I mean, the weather is. We are definitely moving into summer, and it's coming. That
Right.
counteroffensive is coming. So apparently, the Russians are so nervous they're shooting down their own aircraft. There have been
Yeesh.
at
Yeah.
least two, probably three aircraft that have been shot down outside of
4.
a town called Bryansk. We're up to
4.
four now. Reports of four.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's over the last few days. This has been happening. So, but today we had two for sure, and then I don't know if there's four today or two today, and a couple drips and drabs over the last couple of days. But regardless, Bryansk is this. It's a place with military facilities and all the rest of
Right.
it. And
So
apparently they're so jittery. An Su-34 and a couple of MiG-8s. MI-8s.
well, those are helicopters. The Mi-8 helicopters.
Right.
2 of those were shot down. An
Two of those
Su-35 and an
yeah.
Su-34. Su-35. They're both fighter planes. 35, 34.
Yeah,
One
those
does
are
the
fixed.
job. But they literally
Those are
are.
fixed wing. What we used to call fast movers. Those are fast movers.
Yeah.
Which stuns me as to why the Russians would shoot down a fixed wing aircraft like that, because
Besides ineptitude
Ukraine is not
and
going to.
insanity,
Ukraine is not
paranoia.
going to. Well, they're jittery as you know what.
Mhm.
That's been an embarrassment for the Russians. There's all
There was
sorts of stuff going
there,
on.
yeah. So according to Baza in Klintsy, which is outside of where you're talking about,
Bryansk.
Bryansk, yeah. All 3 members of the crew of the Mi-8 helicopter, the first one died. In the Unetsky district, a second one crashed. 3 or more members of the crew were killed. Basically, everybody on board.
Wow.
In the village of Nizhnyaya, 2 pilots of an Su-34 fighter bomber were killed. And in Soretsky Ant, the pilot of an Su-35, that's the fixed wing fighter you're talking about, was killed. So insofar as I know, there are no survivors that they're admitting to or whatever in any of these. 2 helicopters, a bomber, and a fighter. And apparently a civilian was killed. A woman was killed in, the crash.
On the
like
ground.
It landed on her.
On the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's awful.
It's
and
also
in so many
like
ways
insane.
pathetic.
That's a crazy thought. Like 2 of your own helicopters, one of your own bombers and one of your own fighters, and you shot it down inside your own territory. It's not even like they shot it down over Donetsk or Luhansk. It's inside the country.
I know. It's crazy. I mean, this is the state of Russia. This is the state of their fighting capability. This is the state of their command and control. It's
Yeah.
I mean, and the video, and then to go back to Bakhmut as well. I mean, aside from the craziness of shooting down your own planes, because
Right.
you're either screwing up, or you really are literally so terrified that you're shooting anything that's flying.
Right.
But
And there's
then
no
you look at
coordination.
Bakhmut,
That would mean
there's
they're
no
not even
coordination,
talking
and
on the
there's no
ground. Right.
right, exactly. I mean, we have what we used to call blue on blue, which is basically when our forces would fight, and then we would have blue
Yeah.
on green if we had coalition forces in the area or allies. So if you screw up and you shoot a bunch of Afghan soldiers, that's referred to as blue on green. But it is I mean, we train so much in NATO to avoid that kind of stuff, and we train internally within the U.S. military so much to avoid doing that kind of thing. To have that happen 4 times in a 72-hour period, something like that, for the Russians, it's just, I mean,
it's unheard of in the
something's
world.
wrong. Something's wrong. I mean, something is seriously wrong.
And this is in the same week, by the way, as their big military parade, which was, sparsely attended and a half as long as it normally is, and had one sad little tank riding down, it's.
I mean, it was, and then I mean, nobody was there. No dignitaries arrived of any, predominant countries. It was all former Soviet
Lukashenko
republics.
left with a stomach bug or something.
Lukashenko in Belarus, he left with some sort of illness. I mean, it was all like client state guys from Africa where they're trying to exert their influence.
Right.
But normally, in a normal year, you would have high-ranking dignitaries. I mean, like ministers of defense or Ministry of Foreign Affairs being there from like all the allied nations, but nothing. It was pathetic.
Right. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. While we're in the break, you can follow Phillip Ittner, 1L 2Ts, on Twitter and the other machines, and check out his vlog. He posts it on his Twitter feed as well. And then, of course,
you're getting a lot of praise for your vlog in the chat, Phil. Everybody wants you to know how great it is.
And chat, prepare your questions for Phil to catch you up.
Got a bunch.
And I will still say the news out of Turkey is one of the bigger pieces of bad news for Russia, and Trump ultimately. We'll be back. Welcome back to the show, House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. WCPT820.com is the website. Now, you were saying one of the big other stories besides Turkey, obviously, is, and you brought this up during the break, Phil, and maybe you can bring everybody up to speed on this, is the arms shipments related to South Africa and their financial situation right now, because we'll get into that a little bit, and their power grid sucks, but that's another conversation as well. And then there was another payment you mentioned, the $7.2 million payment. Go ahead.
Well, the thing about South Africa is that yesterday the U.S. ambassador, came out and publicly said that they had evidence that the South Africans were providing the name of Russian. Oh,
got you. You're back. You're okay.
Or did I still have you?
You're still here.
I'm back.
Yep.
I'm back. So the Russian U.S. ambassador comes out and publicly says U.S. has evidence of South Africans are giving weapons to the Russians to use in Donbass, and it sparks this major diplomatic row. The U.S. ambassador is called out, to discuss it. The head of the Prime Minister Ramaphosa is calling Moscow, and there's this whole roundabout thing of like, are they providing weaponry to Russia to continue the war effort? There's some reports that the U.S. ambassador may have walked it back. I'm not sure. That was right before we went on air. I was looking. I couldn't get anything definitive. It was apparently a tanker that was parked out in South Africa. Remember that South Africa is part of the BRICS nations, which is related with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and they're supposed to be all buddy counterbalanced to America. There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, there's a BRICS meeting coming up. Will Putin travel to it? Will South Africa, as signatories on the International War Crimes Tribunal, do what they're supposed to do and send them to The Hague? Probably unlikely. But we are clearly becoming more and more frustrated with South Africa. And look, South Africa, by the way, whatever they're giving to Russia.
Mhm.
South Africans are not heavy on like armor. They're not heavy on aircraft. That's not their expertise. Their expertise is a huge stockpile of ammo and
Yeah.
a lot of like infantry fighting vehicles and stuff like that. That's what the South Africans generally
Mhm.
focus on. So that's probably what they
Which is,
sent to the Russians.
in a lot of ways too, that it almost is tantamount to a refund, because Russia supplies South Africa with so much like ammo and stuff. It's not unlike what's going on in Belarus, where Russia is calling in a bunch of markers, where that
Yeah.
technically it qualifies as them supplying Russia with stuff because it's theirs now. It was either sold to them by Russia or and they're just selling it back at a premium, which is more than likely what's happening, is that Russia sold them that stuff for a certain amount of money, and they're selling it back to Russia for a little bit of like extra money or extra oil in this particular case. But they're, so right now the row is still continuing insofar as I can find.
My bet is that the South Africans will be.
Hold on, they will. The South Africans will be.
Because
Yeah.
Persuaded. I think they'll be persuaded not to further that kind of conduct. I think they may take it out of the public arena. I think there may be some sort of diplomatic stepping back by the U.S. ambassador, but I bet you anything behind closed doors they're saying we could crash your economy and
Right.
you know.
Well, I mean, the storyline
because I'm
around.
screwed.
Yeah.
All it would be reinforcing sanctions. So it's not like, I mean, it would be an exertion of U.S. power, but,
Right.
it is what it is. Shouldn't be selling weapons to the Russians.
Yeah, the South African rand is their currency, and it has dropped precipitously of late. It is now it's worth about 5 cents, and it's been on a downward slope for a while. It's never been. Yeah, it 5 years ago it was worth 8 cents. So beyond the big drop in 2021, that area, which a lot of currencies went through, it got a boost back up, but it is effectively they're having rolling blackouts all over South Africa. They can't keep the lights on. That's been a problem because they are largely relying on two sources for their funding. They're getting energy from Russia, but they're also getting technology from China. So they, as part of the Belt and Road Initiative, South Africa decided a while back that they were going to jump on board with this whole, hey, China's going to give us these low interest loans and we'll have plenty of jobs because they'll build these infrastructure projects here, and we need a power grid upgrade, and we need certain roads and bridges fixed. And then the Chinese rolled in with Chinese workers and did it all. So none of the workers in South Africa, just like any of the other countries that China's involved in the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa, none of the locals got jobs. They brought in their own contractors and then paid themselves with the loaned money that they allegedly gave to the country in the first place. So, and then the work is substandard and has been collapsing, but you still owe us full price. Is sort of the Chinese.
I saw them do that in Afghanistan. The exact same technique.
Yeah, and in Afghanistan, it's such a mess. You could blame it on everything around you. But in other countries like South Africa that actually had an infrastructure that you can point to, it becomes very obvious. It is very similar to the kind of stuff you're seeing around the edges of Saudi Arabia and the UAE where they've done projects.
They sell it on, we're going to do this thing and we're going to make this major development and we'll like employ local people and everything will be great. And then once the deal is made, they fly in Chinese workers and then it's
and there's been all kinds of I would say like protests and riots about these in particular. And one of the ones that stands out is in like 3 different countries, they'll roll in and Chinese immigrants to the country who are basically working for the government. It's not like people who are genuinely moving to a country because they want to. These aren't Chinese expats. They are sent by the government as almost like a satellite business to front their version of Walmart. And effectively, if you are in business in any of these African countries and you import goods from China, you pay a tax on them. But if Chinese nationals do it, they do not pay that tax. So they can undercut you by a massive percentage, sometimes as much as 15%. And obviously that just puts everybody locally out of business. And then on top of that, they build these giant Chinese malls that are only owned by Chinese nationals that are directly related to the government. There are these satellite organizations where the Chinese workers buy stuff from while they're doing the project. And then when the project's over, they leave and they just shut the mall. So there's this cadavered, empty mall with none of the goods coming in, except on a baseline level. And it's still, the prices go up 15% in the mall because nobody's getting the break that they were getting previously. So it's pretty horrible. And there's a story in Reuters about how the South African rand has been hit by a perfect storm, and people are just selling it right now. They're just getting out of the rand, and it's not that different from the Turkish lira or the ruble, for that matter. The only difference is that ruble made it illegal. Russia made it illegal to get out of the ruble. That's the only reason it was able to stabilize, because you couldn't get rid of it. And now that you can, because people find other ways to do it, they're like, okay, I'll just use my ruble to buy gold, or I'll buy Chinese yuan, then I'll get out of the yuan in another market, which is slow and costs you extra money, but it's better than losing your money entirely. Once that road was set up, and that's one of those things where China and Russia are not partners. They are adversaries. They're frenemies at best. So let's we got about 2 minutes before the break. Let's see if we can get one question in from the chat before we go to break.
Sure thing, yeah.
Sure.
From Ed's 3D Tech. This came in even before Phil was on. Could you ask Philip about...
Can't hear Johnny.
Okay, he's
Can you hear
saying, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
But I can't hear the show, and I can't hear Johnny.
What about the Lukashenko illness?
So I don't know when
he's asking. Yes, he's asking you about the Lukashenko illness. Has there been any other news on Lukashenko's illness?
Not since he left. Not since he left Moscow. He left Moscow early. He didn't go to an after-events dinner. He had bandages on his hand. The thinking being that he was covering up some sort of drip that it had put in here. He looked awful. But yeah, he's back in Minsk, and we have not heard anything in the last 2 days. Since then, nothing. But then that's Lukashenko all over.
Right.
It's his regime. He won't talk about anything, and he doesn't have to, because he doesn't have a free press. So I have not seen anything about an update on his health. They're going to just say the great leader is recovering. He was a little under the weather from all the travel and the exertion of going to the parade. Don't worry, he's fine. And then we'll find out he had a seizure or something like that.
Or like old school Russian stuff, which is like, he's got a cold, he's been shot. He's been shot. He's been dead for a month. Right. That was the old thing with like the joke with Russian leaders is like, he's got a paper cut. He lost his hand in an industrial accident. He's got the flu. He's actually got typhoid and he's on a ventilator. He's recovering. He's been dead for a month. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more. Johnny Million, twitch.tv/it's Johnny Million, and twitch.tv/Hal Sparks. I'm back. And Johnny Million, we've got more questions for Phillip Ittner on our way back.
We do?
After the break. We'll be back.
For the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God! They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
We got plenty of questions from the chat room, and since Johnny Million can't, Phil can't hear Johnny, and since Johnny can't ask him, I will be asking them. But that allows Johnny to just interrupt us bizarrely with sound effects and guitar and that kind of stuff throughout, which will and Phil will just have to assume that weird moments of silence were caused by Johnny Million pulling a moment. So there you go. All right. First question up. Any truth to the rumor that Lukashenko of Belarus was poisoned? And I would imagine that's hard to say.
I mean, I can't imagine that he was, frankly, unless it was somebody internally within Belarus that did it.
Mhm.
There's
Right.
no reason for Putin or the GRU to poison Lukashenko. He's useful to them
Right. Right. Yeah. It's
for
like
now.
yeah. It's like somebody
So
killing their ventriloquist dummy and losing their hand in the process.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible somebody, a Belarusian opposition member or something, may have done. Look, you got to understand, Lukashenko's regime is very, very difficult to know what's actually happening because he controls everything. I mean, he is Europe's last dictator. He will control the information flow 100%. So
Mhm.
it's going to be really difficult to know if he was poisoned or if he's seriously ill or anything
Right.
like that. They will control that message.
So the other one was somebody asked about if we are aware of the balance of defensive versus offensive weapons in Ukraine as far as the money that goes in, like which direction that leans. I would imagine because of the Lend-Lease program, that's an odd thing to measure too.
Well, certainly Ukraine's air defenses have gotten significantly better.
Mhm.
I mean, they're really quite good now, and of course, we have the Patriots in here,
Right.
and that kind of stuff. And then when it comes to offensive capabilities, the Brits giving the Storm Shadow to the cruise missile to the Ukrainians, that's going to make a huge difference. Obviously, they have the HIMARS,
Yep.
and they've got main battle tanks that we have yet to see in action. We probably won't see that until the full on counteroffensive, which has not actually fully started yet.
Right.
But the Ukrainians are well suited both in offense and in defense. The Russian side of the equation, I mean, who's to tell? They're shooting their own planes out of the sky.
Right.
Their soldiers are running away. They're drunk. There's internal fighting between generals. I mean, it's their side is chaotic to say the least. So assessing what their real capacity is or what their capabilities are is not as easy as just crunching
Right.
the numbers.
Well, and also if you try to take it more seriously than you can, you sound like an apologist for them to some degree because you're like because it doesn't seem to bear out in reality. We've been talking about Prigozhin and his fight with uh, Shoigu
Shoigu
and
and Gerasimov.
yeah, right. And he had another like video message come out. I think it was yesterday, but he was talking about how the there's not a what not a, everything is headed towards a global tragedy for the Russian Federation. He thinks they're near the end because they're not. He knows that without the spring offensive, they're already behind the eight ball. They're already in trouble. So if it comes like they know it's coming, and they do, and they don't have the resources to push back, he just knows it's the clock is ticking. And he goes, there is not a day without shame in their fighting. And he said he said he was going to, I think this, and it's all translated, so it's hard for me to tell. He said he was going to stop lying about what was going on there because it was headed towards a global tragedy for Russia. That he was going to stop lying. He's going to stop painting a rosy picture.
Yeah,
Um,
well, and by the way, speaking of translation, if you haven't seen the Japanese television translation of Shoigu's just insane ranting, oh, do look it up. It's hysterical. To hear Shoigu ranting and raving in Japanese is it's a piece of work. It's artistry. Anyhow, um, so yeah, look, Prigozhin is losing his mind, man. I mean,
yeah,
these are, I have said in the past, this whole thing about the boyars fighting amongst themselves and Shoigu and Gerasimov and Prigozhin and Kadyrov and all these guys jockeying for power. Um, and how you can't over tip your hand, because if you have to drag in the czar, then you've already kind of lost, because if he has to come down from his on high and deal with this kind of stuff, he's going to crack some heads. And Prigozhin is just saying, I mean, every day he's coming on and putting out videos that are darn near unhinged.
Right.
And when asked about it, Peskov, Putin's press secretary, was like, "Oh, well, I don't know if he's seen it or not." Of course he's seen it.
Right.
Of course he's seen
Right.
it. Putin has, of course, seen it. I don't.
If only
I
the
think
Tsar
Prigozhin
knew.
That's right, but and he does. But you got to pretend that he's above it all constantly, because then otherwise the whole charade comes crashing down. But Shoigu's like ranting and raving is getting more and more unhinged. I think he's
You mean
getting.
Prigozhin?
I really do think he's getting Prigozhin. What did I say?
Show you,
I
but
said
yeah,
Prigozhin.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I meant Prigozhin. Prigozhin's ranting and raving has gotten increasingly more manic and regular,
Desperate.
and I think and desperate. I think he may be getting to a point, and this is not really. This is a point that was brought to me in discussion with a colleague of mine, who said, I think he may have come to the conclusion that either he wins big, or he dies. That it's
Right.
really that he either dies in Bakhmut, or he somehow is victorious and he gets elevated to a really high place in still Putin's world, because nobody wants
Right,
that
but
job.
how do you bug what's he gonna do? Take Bakhmut, which is useless effectively, and then bug out to Russia and be patted on the back, given a medal, and hope Putin trusts him to be in the neighborhood?
Or he does some sort of miraculous win in Bakhmut, and then he pushes it out, and he becomes the emissary in Donbass. That's just spitballing. I mean, that's his little
He's going to be the
he gets Donbass.
Right. He's going to be the ambassador to a third-story window, is what he's going to be. Honest to God. It's embarrassing.
A lot of them are, Hal.
Yes,
we have a they just don't know it yet.
I'm going to jump to one question, because I before we get to the break, because people are one of the questions was, will Phil consider a book or documentary after the war ends?
Yeah,
I think that would be great. And how much money of the money seized of Russian assets goes to Ukraine? That's it depends on the country, I would guess.
How much time do we have? How much time before the break?
We have a couple minutes. We have 4 minutes.
Oh, great. Okay. Plenty of time.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked that question, because this is a really big development, and it happened Wednesday after we had spoken. So we hadn't had a chance to talk about this. But U.S. authorities, DOJ they've seized $7.2 million from this Russian oligarch Konstantin Malofeyev. And Malofeyev is a guy he's a nutter butter to begin with. Okay, he is a Christian nationalist. He made his money in a lot of different things, but one of the things he did make was this kind of like Orthodox Christianity, like kind of community. He promotes almost an evangelical form of Russian Christian Orthodoxy. I mean, he's deep into the church. Anyhow, he had been funneling money through Cyprus to support the separatist movement from 2014. So this has been going on for a long time. And
interesting, because I brought up Trump's Cyprus money and the fact that Wilbur Ross worked for the Bank of Cyprus around that time. Please continue.
Oh, Cyprus is a fascinating story. There's a terrible, tragic story about a journalist who was killed there investigating stuff. I mean, it's just awful. A lot of money funnels through there. A lot of bad money. And so this guy, Malofeyev, he was funneling money to the separatists in Ukraine through Cyprus. And what the United States did after the invasion last year, they seized all his assets, and now what they have done is they have gone through the process and figured out a way to get the money from Cyprus, the Cyprus banks, to to Ukraine, essentially in location Ukraine for redevelopment, for paying off and building up what was destroyed in the war. Now, that's just one case, but it's important because it's the first one and it sets precedent.
Mm-hmm.
So now what the DOJ can go around doing is, if you've got money, if you're a Russian oligarch and you are on that list of oligarchs that the U.S. Can
As
seize
sanctioned,
property,
right? Yep.
it's now that it's happened once and the precedent has been set and there is a process and a system, we're going to see a lot more.
Mhm.
So there's going to be a lot of money that is going to be taken out of banks in, you name it, in the south of France, in Cyprus, in offshore, wherever, the Caymans or everywhere around the world.
Right.
They'll seize it. They'll go, okay, this is what we did when we did it with Malafama, and then we'll send it to Ukraine. And the Russian oligarchy is going to get really upset. And
Mhm.
I'm all for it.
Before you came on with us today, we were talking about a story that broke today that the FBI raided a Russian-owned condo in Trump Tower in Miami.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
I predict there will be an increasing number of those over the next
As do
few
I.
months. Yeah.
as
And
do
by
I.
the way, and this is breaking. We got about a minute before we have to take a break, but and then we'll get more around to more questions from the chat. But
It's breaking.
breaking right now out of Ukraine that there's an attack going on in Bakhmut and Soledar, and that the Russian troops are under threat of being completely surrounded. There's a pincer move going on, apparently. Ukrainian reconnaissance in force led to the retreat of Russian forces. The entire Bakhmut Soledar group is under the threat of encirclement at this moment. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation recognized the large-scale attacks of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of Bakhmut and Soledar and announced the occupation of the line, taking into account the favorable conditions of the Berkovsky Reservoir near Bakhmut. Prigozhin called it flight, not regrouping, because they said we're going to regroup from there. And basically, that's what you were talking about, where they're fleeing, not falling back. Pro-government political
Zaluzhny,
science.
the head of the Ukrainian military, Zaluzhny, is a master at this kind of stuff. If indeed that's happening right now, I wouldn't be terribly surprised. Yeah, if this goes really bad for the Russians overnight,
really quick,
and we could see
like Kharkiv and Kherson, the movements there.
Yeah,
it looks like that. The
It goes
current
real
attacks of the
quick.
armed forces in Ukraine, north and
They
south
won't
of
stop.
Bakhmut, are reconnaissance in force and only preparation for a large-scale offensive. But these actions have also led to significant success, according to the U.S. The colonel of the armed forces of Ukraine in the reserve, Roman Svitin. They said in the Russian defense line, according to him, weak spots were found. Ukrainian armed forces advanced in the area of Bodonivka on the northwest of Bakhmut. In the Russian rear behind this village is the Borovsky Reservoir, which is what the Ministry of Defense was talking about. On the southern flank of Bakhmut, Russian troops left Kleshchivka, whatever. In the same area, the armed forces of Ukraine took up positions near Ivanovsk, and the target of another UAF attack was Mayorsk, a village located on the northern outskirts of Horlinka, about 20 kilometers south of Bakhmut, and it was actively shelled with MLRS. And then there was an infantry attack supported by tanks that broke through Russian defenses in the Soledar area north of Bakhmut, 2 kilometers deep. This is just basically happening currently. So we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Yep, this may be that tipping point we've been talking about coming. It sounds like it's underway. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sports Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
You are happy, let us be happy together. Whether the weather is cloudy or sunny, I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling, let us smile together. Whether the weather is cloudy or stormy, I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
Yay. Poor Phil
Yeah,
couldn't hear
we're
that because
back.
he can't hear Chicago.
No, Phil couldn't hear the happy song and stuff, and he's going over some of the news that's breaking right now. But we played it. We played it. Welcome back, though.
And I
And by the way,
even had my happy social dancing partner.
oh, that's nice. Yeah, but Joe Biden nesting doll. That's amazing.
The nesting doll, which, by the way, are more Russian than Ukrainian, but then sadly,
Yeah,
this idiot.
that's hilarious.
You know.
That's got no. You know what? The fact that Biden is bigger than him and Trump is trapped inside Joe Biden is in and of itself hilarious.
You know what's even worse? If you're
sounds like a
if
dolphin.
You're Trump.
Yeah, if you're Obama.
Look who's inside of Trump.
Oh, yeah.
That would upset
He's
Trump as well.
inside.
Oh no.
Trump.
Obama's
I got
inside
a
me.
black man
That's the
trapped
Trump.
inside of me.
The Trump fear. All right. So people are asking, by the way, how to donate to you directly. You and I still have to set up your Patreon. Do you have one set up right now?
Not really. No, I
Okay.
set one up, but I haven't gone through the next step. So I do want to have a chat with you about that.
Okay.
maybe
Yes.
on-
All right. So we're gonna
maybe
get
tomorrow.
up to speed.
I don't know if tomorrow. Well, anyhow, someday let's set up a date.
We'll get it. Yeah,
Set
we'll
up
get
on
it
that.
set because I've got a graduation today. My girlfriend's son graduates from college today, so we're having a big party at the house.
yeah.
So we've been setting up. He's got all of his
Mazel
relatives
tov.
coming in to celebrate the fact that there's at least one educated person in this household, and it's very exciting.
Mazel.
And
Mazel.
thanks. So I don't know if this qualifies. Again, I'm very I don't like to have happy endings be related to things that have been bad for other people. But in the case of like Russia and the war, I make a special exception sometimes when they're interesting. But someone, according to the Business Insider, someone in Russia broke into a military airfield and set fire to a bomber jet. And the Russian cops only found out it was happening on social media. A burnt Su-24, like the one that just crashed, was discovered by local authorities after videos of sabotage appeared online, according to Baza. Russian authorities found out through social media that someone had set fire to it. Videos of the burning aircraft in Siberia emerged on pro-Ukrainian channels on Monday. Local security forces later found the scorched plane on the tarmac at an aviation plant. An unknown saboteur
And some
broke
guy
into a
just
Russian
snuck
airfield.
right in and did it.
Yep, and set fire to a supersonic jet. I'm
Millions of dollars.
just poof. Right.
Gone.
The damaged jet, an Su-24 model, was stationed near the town of Novosibirsk in Siberia, according to the Telegram Post.
Novosibirsk.
Novosibirsk. Yes.
Novosibirsk.
And it was slated for repairs and blamed. The Post said it was slated for repairs and blamed the unknown partisans for the attack. The ironic part is, quite frankly, it very well could have just, like, the Russians who were working on it were like, I'm not going to repair this thing. Let's just set fire to it and we'll just say it was sabotage. I don't want to fix this.
Maybe.
And let's go back to drinking. It's entirely possible. It is entirely
Absolutely,
possible.
100% possible.
So,
my happy ending story. My happy ending story is: do you remember recently when there was a Kinjal hypersonic missile fired by the Russians? This new secret weapon that the Russians think is just so magnificent because it flies so fast it can't be intercepted. Well, we learned that it was shot down by a Patriot missile. I only learned today.
Yes.
That it appears that missile was shot. The target of the missile was the Patriot defense system. They were trying to shoot the Patriot.
Oh, the irony.
And the Patriot took it out as it was coming.
That's hilarious.
I mean, I love that story.
Yeah.
And then on a sad note, we lost a member of the press corps this week. There was a young man working for Agency France Press, and he was killed in Chasev Yar, which sends a shiver up my spine because I was just in Chasev Yar. I was in Chasev Yar 2 months ago, give or take. So it's a little bit of a. Yeah. And I mean, it's a nasty place. It's a lot of incoming there, so it's that's a bit of sad news. But I prefer to stick on the positive, so I'll just remember the Patriot story.
Understood. And then let's see. Connie Kelly, who's my flight angel in the chat room, she says, has Ukraine finally realized their airfields are not F-16 friendly, not long enough or clear of FOD enough? Care and feeding of F-16s is not trivial. A-10s are better for the area. Now, I think A-10s are better for everything because they're big, scary airplanes. But as far as, I think those are different use airplanes in that regard.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the problem with the A-10 is the A-10 is meant for one thing and one thing only, and that is close air support.
Yep, it's a flying machine gun.
It's a tank with a Gatling gun. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I've been in positions where we were in combat in Afghanistan. We called in the A-10s. It's an amazing sound to hear. Is that
right.
Gatling gun going off? It's saved my butt. Anyhow, so but the F-16 is a multi-purpose, and I mean, as far as the airfields are concerned, they can adjust that. They can make those changes. They're also getting more Sukhois and all kinds of stuff. I mean, they'll get the F-16 and they'll use it to great effect. But
they will long.
There's
It's more of a long-term effect. Right, and by the way,
like the Abrams, in a lot of ways, like the Abrams.
The United States, supplies of stuff will be ongoing even past the end of this, to be in case Russia ever tries again, depending on whether Russia collapses, and it's even a necessity in that regard if they have the ability to reconstitute themselves over time. But right now, the New York Times is now reporting, as of 30 minutes ago, that basically the Ukrainians are downplaying the advances. They're just keeping mum about it, but it is happening. All the Russian mill bloggers are apparently saying Russia's pro-war bloggers were quick to claim that Ukraine's long-anticipated counteroffensive had begun, but Ukrainian officials downplayed the advances. They're going to. The Ukrainians are going to not talk about this and go, no, it's regular order for a while.
Also, I got to say, I mean, even if they do take Bakhmut, this is not going to stop. The Ukrainians, and they've said this. They want to have victory on the ground, and they want it as quickly as possible. But they want to do it the right way, because they obviously can't do it. They can't fail, and they can't show just little.
And you don't want to waste anything. Yeah, you don't want to feel like.
I mean, Zelensky yesterday made a statement saying we could go right now if we wanted to, but we'll lose more men if we go right now. Better to wait and have everything taken care of and have the ground perfectly set up for us so we can have the most effect. But they might be going for Bakhmut because they saw some sort of weakness in the line that they could exploit. And so it will, in many ways, and this is just me guessing, but if they're able to take Bakhmut, that defeat, to follow up with a massive maneuver of armies and gaining of huge swaths of the east, it might contribute to destroying Russian morale. Because if they lose Bakhmut after all of this, it's like, well, what are we here for? What are we doing? And also, it'll give them a little taste of what the Ukrainians are capable of with their new weaponry, and that will spread throughout the Russian front. I don't know if the Russians their military will collapse, where this will turn into a rout. Even Prigozhin is saying it. Girkin, the head of the Donbass paramilitaries, who is now kind of in self-imposed exile inside Russia.
Right.
He's been coming out. He's been coming out recently, the last couple of days, and posting stuff like, "We're going to lose. We're going to lose bad."
Yeah.
This is going to be really, really bad. So
we're almost out of time.
Defeat turn into rout.
Yeah, and there are the New York Times is referencing footage of the troops that are surrounding these kind of suburbs of Bakhmut. Rolling out of armed personnel carriers and supported by tank divisions. It does look like
textbook NATO combined arms training.
Yep.
This is what's going to defeat the Russians, as much as the equipment we gave them, the training and how to use it better than the way the Russians do.
And the coordination,
blunt instrument. and the coordination. This is going to, well, let's
Yeah.
not get ahead of ourselves, but this is not going to be a good summer to be a Russian soldier.
No, it is not. And on that note, we're at the end of the show. Follow Phillip Ittner on
Thanks,
Twitter,
everyone.
1L2Ts,
Yay.
and check out his blog.
Go check out my vlog. My
yeah.
latest
Yeah.
vlog is about a chef, a Ukrainian chef who trained in Los Angeles, and he's feeding soldiers on the front line. Chef Zhinya. Go check out his website. The link is on my vlog, and he needs all the support that we can give. He's a good guy, and he's doing a good job. So go check it out.
Same thing of Johnny Million. He's a good guy, and he needs all the help he can get. Twitch.tv/itsjohnny
Sorry I couldn't hear you, Johnny. Bye-bye.
Twitch.tv/Hal Sparks. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Chicago. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Chicago.
And we're out. Thanks.